Bismillah. Ah,
Assalamualaikum. Good morning semua.
Waalaikumsalam.
Suara pun suara baru-baru bangun semua kan? Okay. Today, our topic of discussion will revolve around the actors of international relations. So this is already chapter number 4. In the previous chapter, we discussed about the historical background, foundation or basics of international relation, and then in the later part, we discussed about Cold War, pre, during, and post-Cold War, and the New World Order and whatnot. And then last time around, we discussed about the theory that offers a framework to understand international event from a more systematic manner using the framework. So each theory offers different framework. And then for this chapter, we discussed about the actor in that framework. Okay, so you can see the kesinambungan from one chapter to another. So again, the focus for today's class is on the actor in international relations, the variable that influence the dynamic of the international political climate. Okay. So in diplomacy, international law, journalism, and even academic analysis, it is widely assumed that IR consists of the relations between coherent units of states. Okay, a broader context by analyzing relations between government and many other actors. So the first assumption that we have about the actors in international relations is that it only focuses on relationship between states. Okay, so this is aligned with what was argued by realist scholars like Kenneth Waltz, Thomas Hobbes, and the others, which see states as the only significant actor in international relations. Okay, and it is a coherent unit in the sense that they are all sovereign states And even when you want to understand international organization and whatnot, states are the one who run the operation of this international organization. Okay, so that's the first and the most widely assumption over actors in international relation. It only involves states. Okay, but if you look at the broader context of international relation, it does not only concern states. There are other actors in the ecosystem that jointly contribute to the dynamic of international politics. For instance, international organization, non-governmental organization, civil society, multinational corporation, individual, and whatnot. Okay, and so this is more apparent, especially in these recent years, where you see the booming of globalization and technology advancement. Okay, so in a traditional perspective, of course, you only see the relevancy of states in understanding international event, because at that time the lack of technology that help to ease communication between parties from different parts of the world. But as globalization takes place, communication become easier, access to communication also accessible to everyone. So with free market adopted by most country, so the communication allows for more interaction between these actors in international relation. Okay, so looking at the broader context, it does not only concern states actually. There are other significant actors. So the first assumption here, as you can see, the one that, if you can see my cursor right now, the first assumption more aligned with the realism argument, whereas the second one aligned with the liberalism argument. That states country is not the only significant actor. There are other significant actors as well that need to be considered, right? So 5 categories of political actor. Okay, so the first one is government. So obviously we have a lot of government, the acknowledged one and the one that take the power or authority through coercive measures. Okay, but both still are government. Okay, so you need to understand that recognition for government is a different matter to recognition to a country. Okay, recognition to a government, for instance, the courtesy call that you receive once you won an election. Okay, so that one can be considered as indirect recognition to your government. For instance, the ongoing feud between tension, ya, maybe not feud tu macam terlalu keras, atau maybe tension between Malaysia and ASEAN chair. Okay, because Malaysia disagree with the ASEAN chairman decision to visit Myanmar, knowing that the Myanmar current government adalah military junta that topple down, that initiate coup to the democratic elected government in Myanmar from before. Okay, so when the ASEAN chairman visit, yeah, for official purpose, that can also be considered as indirect recognition to the government. So that's why there was some tension between our foreign minister and also ASEAN chairman, I think early this year, okay, which prompt our prime minister to interfere in the matter to simmer the tension. Okay, so 200 countries, including 192 UN members, yeah. And then we also have international governmental organization. Okay, we have a lot of international governmental organization Just to mention a few that have global memberships, like United Nations, obviously the most apa, numbers of membership out of all the international governmental organization. We also have NATO, previously established during the Cold War, have history with Warsaw Pact, and another security alliances by USSR from before. So it was between NATO and Warsaw Pact at that time. So obviously, as the democratic bloc won the Cold War, NATO persists, NATO survived, whereas Warsaw Pact disbanded. And we also have European Union, another influential international governmental, international regional organization, in which its members comes from those located in the Europe continent. Another interesting case to mention whenever we discuss about EU is the Brexit event, in which we can discuss on how that action, or when Britain pull out from EU, what are the aftermath to influence by EU? Okay, so that one can also be discussed later. And then we also have transnational or multinational cooperation, or in short, MNCs, ya. For example, Vodafone, ya. Ini jenama-jenama dulu lah nih, Vodafone. And then we also have Ford, we have Shell, Microsoft, with 773,000 foreign affiliates, in which the demography of these individual MNCs, yeah, consists of employees from different countries. Okay, especially if it's a chain business or a franchise, or yeah, where they open up their business in other country aside from the one that they have in the host country, in the home country. Okay, so when that happens, they also have influence, especially in terms of economic sector. Okay, investment. With investment, you create more work opportunity. When you create more work opportunity, you pay more paycheck to the employee. So that means the government in some way also have to rely on you to make sure that the economic transaction continues. And that would help tremendously in terms of the economic development in a particular country. Okay, so that's why MNC also a significant actor to be considered, since that a lot of these home country to these MNCs use these entities as their political tools to penetrate into other countries' affairs. Okay, and then we also have the fourth one, NGOs and INGOs. For 10,000 single country NGO, for instance, population concern UK. We also have Mercy here in Malaysia, which have significant transnational activities that cross borders. Yeah. And then we also have 7,300 INGOs, for instance, Amnesty International, yeah, ICRC, what else? Kita ada a lot lah, yeah, in which for NGOs and INGO, the members mostly not country but individual that comes from civil society. Okay, which means the middle class in a country, those middle class, they are the one who run these NGOs and INGOs, capitalizing on their knowledge and networking to make sure that they stand for as a voice to the masses that do not have the platform to raise their concern. Okay, so NGOs and INGOs also important in the sense that they are the most efficient and effective watchdog to the current political climate. Okay, and then question number 5, terrorists. 55 ethnic group, 50 religious group, 20 left-wing groups, and 5 right-wings group. Okay, in which usually when we discuss about terrorists, they have political motive behind their operation. It can be autonomy. It can be that they are pursuing more autonomy. It can also be that they are pursuing for a total independence. Okay, if let's say it's for more autonomy, for instance, the MNLF in southern Philippines. If it's for total independence, for instance, in southern Thailand, yeah, Pulo, or even a successful story like the one in East Timor, yeah, from Indonesia, East Timor Militia, I cannot remember the name lah. Tapi they also pursue total independence as evident from the survey conducted by UN in their country during DJ Habibie time. Yeah? And then we move on to the next slide. What is a nation? Yeah. So a nation, ideally, what is nation states? Okay, it's two different terms that brings a totally different meaning. Okay, so nation is another term, state another different term. But in this case, we want to look at the meaning when we mention nation states. Okay, so ideally, a nation and state represent the joining of a nation and state. All nation is united within its own state, and the people of that state overwhelmingly identify with the nation. Tidak apa? Okay, right. So nation and state, right? So for nation, it's mostly concerned about the non-tangible, yeah, non-tangible thing. For example, those with same skin color or ethnicity, those are all considered as nation. Okay, for example, the Malay world, Dunia Melayu. So that one is considered as nation. For example, Quds, yeah, the Quds ethnicity in Iran, Iraq, and Turkey, also example of nation. They do not get limited by international borders. Okay, for instance, the Quds community, they reside in 3 different countries in Iran, Iraq, and also Turkey, but they are all still considered as a nation. Basically, it's because of their shared ethnicity. Okay, for example, Tamils in India and Sri Lanka, or Cubicoids. Yeah, so those are considered as a nation when they share demographic ethnicity, or even the cultural similarities. Malaysia and Indonesia, we can also be considered as nation. Okay, to some extent, to the southern Thailand as well, where a lot of the Malay community reside at. Yeah, so those are considered as nation, which refers to shared ethnicity or similar culture that does not get limited by international border. Okay, remember, international border only exists after this the signing or ratifying of the Westphalian Treaties in 1648. Okay, so before 1648, the system of international relations mostly based on nation concept and not state. Okay, whereas for state, it refers to the concept of a politic where we have different areas governed by different political entities. So that's state, yeah. So a nation state is the state or country that has defined border and territory. It is additionally a country in which a nation of principally the same type of people exists, organized by either race or cultural background. Okay, so compared to nation is a non-tangible in the sense that you cannot define their area. They can be a nomads. They can move from one place to another, and they do not stay in one place. So they do not have a tangible institution. Whereas for states, when you clearly, okay, when you clearly apa buat your international border, it become a tangible institution. Okay, so it's a political unit that have usually two characteristics. The first one is territorial sovereignty. Okay, very straightforward. It's when a state governs a specific identifiable a portion of their areas where they reside. Okay, and then the second one is sovereignty, in which it's about the absolute right to govern. Okay, so a state is a tangible institution because, like I said, of the area. Okay, so principal actor on the world stage, because most people would agree that the state is the most important actor in international system, although realism and liberalism would disagree about the relative importance of each other, yeah, of each other actors. Realists, for instance, would insist that states are the only significant actor. But on the other hand, liberal would argue that states are the only most important among the many. Okay, uh, states continue to dominate the action and to act with independence in a largely anarchical, horizontal structured international system, meaning all states is considered as equal, operating in the same system which is in state of disorder. Okay, and then another one is vertical authority. Yeah, so vertical authority structure on point number 5. The earlier one adalah horizontal, whereas for anarchical adalah referred to how the states gradually are separated into different categories and status quo in the system, forming international hierarchy. Okay, despite the concept of horizontally structured international system where everyone are assumed of equal status, but gradually, okay, if you look at the reality, gradually they all get separated by categories, yeah, by international social class, in which you can see industrialized country, third world country, developing, underdeveloped, all sort of label that we use to refer to different categories or social class in international system. Okay, and then the government and a state's leader, okay, refer to the structure and practice of the institution and office that make up the government. Obviously, as we establish a sovereign state, it cannot run on its own. You cannot resort to the traditional practice of democracy where you invite everyone to come to a common place, to a place, and then to conduct votes, because states, it covers wide areas of land. So it's not practical, for instance, to invite everyone from Peninsula, from Sarawak, to come over to KK. we cannot accommodate such large number of audience or participant. So what we can do is to conduct general election using representative system. Okay, in our case, we use the first past the post system. That the purpose behind that is to establish a structure. Okay, the government to run the administration of that particular sovereign areas. Okay, so usually states with concentration of power by central government often considered as strong states, whereas countries with check and balance and generous delegation of authority is considered as the weak states. Okay, this is a very common considering that it helps you to create your image in the eyes of the other sovereign states that operate in the same system. Okay, that can be observed from the image that we have of the North Korea leader. Okay, we view them as a strong states because of the concentration of power held by their supreme leader. Okay, whereas if you look at democratic country like Malaysia, a lot of people they undermine us. Okay, because we have to discuss everything. Just look at how they look at how they perceive the efficiencies of ASEAN, which based on consultation. Okay, that's why I said that countries with concentration of power by central government are most of the time considered as strong states, and the other way around for those with a delegation and consultation type of administration. Okay, of course you can argue, yeah, and I also agree that that might not explain the whole situation, or maybe not entirely true, because there are actually some states like US that if we follow the same logic as what I stated just now, then we have to look at US as a weak state because they also adalah democratic country. Okay, sedangkan realitinya US adalah strong states. It's just that the logic that I mentioned just now adalah the common standard that we usually use, okay, to differentiate strong states and weak states. Okay, so that's how you look at the government role in helping to shape or design the image that we how people see us lah, right? And then nation adalah to refer to those who share demographic and cultural similarities. Okay, for instance, in most country, okay, there are only two type of demography. It's either homogeneous or heterogeneous. Okay, so for homogeneous basically means that a lot of the people, most of the people in that country, the citizens, are from the same races. For instance, Korean, Chinese, Japanese. Yeah, if you go there, they only have one ethnicity. Okay, they all look the same. And in other cases, there are also countries with heterogeneous demography. For instance, Malaysia, Indonesia, okay, Singapore, mostly countries that have prior experience of colonization. Okay, as a result from that period, we have to accept new demography to our country as part of the prerequisite conditions set by our former colonial master so that we can get our independence. So we for this heterogeneous country, we usually resort to melting pot concept, in which since we are forced to accept these other races, we need to somehow live together in a harmonious way. So we become a melting pot in which we assimilate, okay, and create a custom structure that can accommodate everyone equally, okay. Uh, The second one possess a feeling of community mutually identified as a group distinct from other group. Okay, for the first point, like I said, there are two types. There are two type of demography. It's either homogeneous or heterogeneous. So for nation, it usually in the case of homogeneous country. So for heterogeneous country, tidak adalah nation tu, so orang tidak berkongsi ethnicity ataupun bahasa and whatnot. Jadi nation ini hanya wujud untuk homogeneous population. Okay, that's why when we have a homogeneous population, possess a feeling of community, mutually identify as a group, distinct from other group. Okay, like I said, one, it must be homogeneous. Two, does not get confined to a specific area. Especially if you look at the interaction between the peninsula, those at the border line with our neighbor country. For instance, di Sungai Bolok, semua tu kan, where Kelantanis, yang semua di bahagian-bahagian sempadan ni, dorang ada keluarga di negara-negara jiran ni. That's why itu adalah contoh nation tu. Okay, if you want to understand that, so that's another history lah. Macam mana Thailand kasih pisah kita punya area di Southeast Asia ni kepada colonial master. That's how they survive. That's why they never get colonized, because they become the buffer state. But as a consequence of their action, these people, they are relative yang usually daripada homogeneous population get separated into different sovereign states. Jadilah macam tu, yang mana keluarga di sini, kamu pula di negara jiran, macam tu. Okay, and then want to control themselves politically. Like I said, yang Southern Philippines tu, Pulo. Okay, Pulo is a separatist group at the Southern Philippines. Because they want to control themselves politically. They do not identify themselves as a Thailand citizen, because they can feel, okay, how they are being treated differently as compared to the local people because of the difference in culture and ethnicity. So they know that. That's why they want to control themselves politically. There were several attempts by Pulo group to get independence for their territory. Okay, and two you can read later lah. So a nation as compared to a state, a nation is intangible. It exists because its members think it does. Okay, if you look at on the right side, the nation, the people created by a shared belief that the people inside a country are connected to each other. Okay. So states, a tangible institution, government, citizenship, and whatnot. Whereas for nation, shared demographic, kinship, homogeneous, politically motivated, and whatnot. Yeah? If you want to understand this, you can also read ethnic politics. Okay, so ethnic politics focus a lot on nation and states. Yeah? It's just normal that some states think some nation or some ethnicity feels that they are more superior than the other. So that's how conflict, incompatibility between different parties occurs because of such sentiment. As you can observe in United States through the KKK group, Ku Klux Klan, yeah, in which they think that they are more superior than the other races. Okay, so that's how the political game, okay, comes into the equation. When you think that you are better than the others, right? So nation is also another important terms that we need to understand. Now let's look at the distinction between states and nation. A state is a political concept because it's an idea. Okay, if you want to discuss about states, you can use constructivism. A state is only a political concept. It's an idea that we shape in our mind to see this territory as a sovereign area. Okay, but it's not something that you can say for certain if other people does not view it in the same way as you, right? Not subject to external control, in the sense that as everyone already agreed, okay, of mutual consensus that states does exist. So in saying so, they agreed for mutual respect in terms of right to administer. Okay, when I say right to administer, it means independence administration, which does not involve interference from other foreign element. Okay, full right to administer your own territory, and then may consist of one or more nation. Okay, for instance, in Malaysia, we have more than one nation in our country right now. We have the Chinese people, we have the Indian people, we have the Malay people, we have the indigenous group. So a lot of nation in under one umbrella, which is the Malaysian Federation. Okay, whereas for nation, it's basically an ethnic concept. States is a political concept. It's involved political will, whereas for nation it involves ethnic concept. May or may not be independent of external control. Okay, so it can be independent from external control if it's a homogeneous country. Okay, if everyone of same nation manage to establish their own sovereign states, then they are independent of external control. But if they get separated into different territory, then they are subjected to external control because they are all under different administration. Okay, for instance, the Chinese people, we have the mainland Chinese, and then we have a lot of Chinese population migrated to other country. In US, yeah, Chinese community adalah one of the largest community in US, in Malaysia as well, in Singapore, a lot of country, yeah, they usually have Chinese community. So in that sense, you can say that the Chinese nation does not totally independent of external control because they all belong to different political concept or different states. Yeah, may consist of one or more states. Okay, so a state is an independent political entity with clear geographic boundaries. Okay, as you can see from the picture, okay, you can see the state's border. Yeah. Whereas for a nation is a large population that shares same culture, language, tradition, and history. So you can see there, dia highlight terus satu kawasan tuh, bukannya berdasarkan international border. Macam namun tengok yang kiri dan kanan tuh, dia punya size tuh ada perbezaan lah, ya. And then nationalism. Any questions so far?
Maybe from me, sir.
Fazudin, sorry.
Alright. Hello.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Ada soalan, Fazudin?
ada.
Okay.
For the first question yang tentang nation, beza nation sama state. So untuk nation ni contoh lah macam kita cakap yang like satu community Mexican yang macam satu etnicity dekat satu kawasan, dia bukan macam bertabur.
Lalu siapa ini? Cimuru yang lama. Iya. Itu meninggal. Teruk punya bini. Iya.
But we get separated by different political entity, which refers to the establishment of two different sovereign states, Malaysia and also Indonesia. So coming back to your question, whether we can consider the Mexican community that reside in the United States as also a nation, yes, because nation again does not limited to definition of community by states. Okay, they mereka ni melebihi menjangkaui international border, tidak dihadkan kepada persempadanan antara bangsa. Okay, boleh Zudin?
Boleh. Okay, so contoh yang macam kalau kita refer Mexican as as macam the nation of Mexican pun kiranya okay lah.
Yes.
Oh,
right.
Kalau macam Borneo,
yes.
So kalau Borneo tu dikira sebagai nation lah juga, the nation of Borneo.
Yes, exactly. Okay, because of shared culture. In Borneo cases, it's mostly of shared culture because we have different ethnicity in this Borneo island, right? But we share the same culture. Okay, so same ethnicity, same culture, all of which contribute to the establishment of nationalism.
Alright, understand, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Any other question before we proceed? Iqbal?
No, sir, clear.
All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Now let's look at nationalism. Nationalism is simply love of country with all its inhabitants. Okay, a state of awareness that a nation does exist and is made of people who owe allegiance not only to a tribe, clan, or region, nor to any religious or political entity. Okay, so in other words, your loyalty to your country adalah bigger than your association or allegiance to your tribe or clan. Okay, which means the patriotism. You look at your country as your number one priority, even surpassing your allegiance to your clan or region, religious or political entity. So that's nationalism. It's an ideology that holds that the nation should be the primary political identity of individuals. Nationalist ideology maintains that the paramount political loyalty of individuals should be patriotically extended to the nation, state the political vehicles of the nation's self-governance. Okay, so it's an ideology, right? So you can see this, yeah. For instance, in our Rukun Negara, and then okay, saya interested lah because si Izzuddin he mentioned about Indonesia, so I can give example in Indonesia. For instance, dia Sumpah Pemuda, okay, Sumpah Pemuda in which dia potong ini apa kepelbagaian bahasa ni dan juga etnisiti jadikan hanya satu identiti yaitu Indonesian. Okay, so Sumpah Pemuda tu adalah pledge by the youth to only uphold one Indonesian identity. Hence, explain that even the Chinese community in Indonesia cannot speak Chinese; they can only speak Indonesian language. Okay, you can also see that in their own policy For instance, during Sukarno era, he put forward this one concept called as Nasakom, nationalist, agama, and communist. Okay, the first pillar mostly focus on the nationalism in Indonesia, right? So you can see how the initiative effort by this political leader to really implement nationalism in their country, because at the end of the day, okay, it's up to the local society, those who reside in that area, to defend the country whenever needed. Okay, so it's a paramount political loyalty of individual, in which when we discuss about states, everyone is equal. They all are citizens of the states. Okay. Nationalism is the belief that people of the same nation, meaning people of a common culture and history, should live in their own independent country. So nationalism is exactly what drives separatist group to pursue total independence. Okay, especially a freedom fighter for a nation. Okay, they want to get independence because of the nationalism that they have. This explains the sudden surge of interest in our country, in Tanah Melayu at that time, to negotiate for independence because of the nationalism. But remember, okay, nationalism cannot exist if not for the middle class, okay, because of the knowledge, the literacy, the awareness that they have. Only nationalism can exist. Okay, that's why middle class continuous education is important in all country. Okay, only by that we can really sow the seeds, yeah, from the nationalism that we instill in our people. So an ideology, a complex of related idea that establishes values about what is good and bad. Direct adherence on how to act, or patriotism. Linked together, those who adhere to the ideology, usually if you look at the members of a particular ideology movement, regardless of leftist or right wing, they all come together because of their shared ideology, okay, which means they think alike. They have the same view on a specific subject matters. Okay, distinguish them from those who do not. Connect individuals, their sense of community, and their political identity in contradiction to other nations. Okay, basically, you look at your country as a different to other nation, right? The links are constructed when individuals in three different contexts, okay, become sentimentally attached to the homeland, gain a sense of identity and self-esteem through their national identification, and motivated to help their country. That's why a lot of scholars view this stateless group as a time bomb, because they do not have an identity. So that makes them a vulnerable group, at the same time also a dangerous threat to the country's sovereignty. Okay, for the citizen, for the legal citizen, they already have this sense of belongingness, identity, how they identify themselves as Malaysian. But for the stateless group, mereka ni masih lagi in the air, nggak tahu orang dia identifikasinya kepada siapa, loyalty mereka sepatutnya kepada siapa. Okay, that's why the constant pressure towards the government to address the issue so that this time bomb can be eliminated. Okay, it's not about the political will already. Yeah, the political will is already there. It's a matter of method. Okay, the way on how we want to go about the issue. right? Hence the foreign identification card and all sort of names suggested to the government and all that, okay, because of nationalism issue, right? And then second one, IGO, intergovernmental organization. So if you have any question, feel free to interrupt, yeah. And then here you can see all sort of logos, which mostly from institution under United Nations. Yeah, we have here APEC. Yeah, more on the economic dimension lah. And then we have ICRC. Ya, lanjutan daripada PBSM yang kamu join dulu sekolah. We have ILO on labor's issue, and then we have what else? IMF, okay, for financial crisis, and then we have UNHCR, yeah, on statelessness issue. We have UNICEF on children's rights, and then we also have Human Rights Watch, which give an index or evaluation on human rights adherence by all UN members. So that's one of the concern of Malaysia, to not be viewed negatively or be evaluated negatively when the index come out. And then a lot lah, ya, banyak nih sebenarnya nih, so you can read setiap satu nih nanti lah. So intergovernmental organization. The term intergovernmental organization refer to an entity created by treaty involving two or more nations to work in good faith on issues of common interest. Okay, so in the absence of a treaty, an IGO does not exist in legal sense. So what is the main purpose of IGO? To create a mechanism for the world inhabitants. Okay, IGO usually comes from an international treaty. Okay, when we have an international treaty, it brings along with it the legal personality. Okay, so it gives some legal sense to the cooperation that later you would forge with the other members, and it requires at least two nations before an IGO can be established. But of course, the smaller the size of the organization, the lesser the influence that the organization possesses over their members. Okay, that's why a lot of this IGO proactively promotes membership for their IGO, because that would mean increased influence. Okay, to create mechanism for world inhabitant, most of this IGO, they have specific purpose, like NATO for security alliances, for ASEAN regional bodies, IMF economy, WHO health issues, and many more. Yeah. For a bigger international organization, they can cover more areas. But for a smaller organs, like the one in UN, UN adalah umbrella. Under UN, we have a lot of institutions that tackle specific issues. Okay, so IGO consists of countries. Now, IGO share the stage with states in IR. So, how do you relate membership in IGO to IR to states' political behavior? Because once they join an IGO, they get bound to whatever decision made in the IGO that they join. For instance, in EU, okay, in European Union, in terms of foreign currency, in terms of immigration and passport, they have loose immigration control among their members, okay, because of the decision by European Union. They have same okay, common currency among its members. So in a way, you can say that whatever decision made in EU, okay, it have an impact towards the foreign policy by their by their members. Okay, so they did have a significant influence over the political behavior of states if IR. Okay, in some cases, when conflict arise, United Nations deploy peacekeeping mission. That's also another example of how IGO actually shared the stage with states in IR. Okay, an organization comprised primarily of sovereign states, member states or of other intergovernmental organization. Okay, an organization comprised primarily of sovereign states, because one of the sources for states recognition, yeah, not government recognition, but states recognition, is membership in an international organization. If you look at the charter, if you look at ASEAN Charter, for instance, you must be a sovereign state before your application for membership can be considered. Okay, if you are not a sovereign state, then you do not stand any chance of getting admitted as a member in ASEAN. Okay, IGO is an important aspect of international law. Not only they are the one who provide the platform, like ICC and ICJ, as International Court of Criminal and International Court of Justice under United Nations, but also IGO, they initiate a lot of treaties that later eventually will lead to more as the creation of rules and regulation. Okay, so for instance, law of the sea, LOS. Okay, group ratio, group apa semua sekolah dia ni, ratio something, you can check lah. Law of the sea, and then later it become customary law and then get accepted as international law. Now we refer to LOS as UNCLOS, UNCLOS, okay, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Okay, nanti we can discuss further in detail in terms of international law in chapter number 8. But IGO does have an influential role in international law. And then IGOs are established by treaty that act as a charter, creating the group. Okay, so if you do not have a charter, then your IGO would not survive, because you want to be as clear as possible to your members on the objective, the limitation, the do's and don'ts, and whatnot. Yeah, so charter provide all the explanation for that. Okay, it even provides the vision, mission, aspiration, long-term, short-term, and everything in its charter. And later on, all of the decision will be made in accordance to what is stated in their charter. Okay, so that's why it's important. Treaties are formed when lawful representative government of several states go through a ratification process, providing the IGO with an international legal personality. Okay, when treaties are initiated, lawful representative refers to official sent by the participating states. Okay, it must be an official representative. Okay, usually in terms of treaties, they will send relevant minister. If it involves a treaty on health, then we most probably would send our health minister. If it involves treaties about statelessness, then we most probably would send our home minister or foreign minister or even our defense minister. So relevant minister according to what subject is being addressed in the treaties. okay, because they are the one with the authority. But before we even talk about that, before we even enter that stage, it requires political will from the government itself. Whether or not they want to proceed with the treaty, that totally depends on the political will on the executive level. Intergovernmental organization, in a legal sense, should be distinguished from simple grouping or coalition of states. Okay, sometimes we have bilateral alliances or multilateral alliances that we form outside of international organization, but that does not bound you to any legal sense. Okay, because this individual diplomatic relationship through bilateral and multilateral relationship, it does not have charter, yeah, that provides legal sense. Whereas when you form the collaboration or whatnot through your international organization membership, okay, depending on which organization, if it's EU, it's binding. If it's in ASEAN, it's not binding. So that one must be analyzed but case by case lah. Okay. And then IGO must also be distinguished from treaties. Okay, treaties also sometimes, usually treaties initiated in conventions, international convention. Okay, usually the output from international convention is the joint communique, ataupun in other words, joint statement. Sometimes it can be resulted in the ratifying of a treaties, okay, antara kenyataan bersama ataupun ratify treaties daripada international convention. International convention ni selalunya dibuat oleh IGO, tapi that's two totally different thing lah. Many treaties such as the NAFTA, North American, before the establishment of WTO. Okay, NAFTA adalah a predecessor of WTO. Yeah, do not establish an organization and instead rely purely on the parties for the administration becoming legally recognized as an ad hoc commission. Okay, so IGO differs in function, membership, and membership criteria. They have various goals and scope, often outlined in the Treaty of or Charter. Like I said, each of these IGO, they address specific dimension or areas. Okay, for WTO, mostly on economy lah. Sebab WTO stands for World Trade Organization. Same goes for IMF lah. Okay, so some IGOs develop to fulfill a need for neutral forum for debate or negotiation to resolve dispute. Okay, ASEAN through their ASEAN way, non-interference policy, hospitable neighbor and whatnot, all of which actually promote neutral forum negotiation. Even if you look at the ASEAN Charter, it time and time again insists for conflicting parties to resort to peaceful means in settling the dispute. Okay, other developed to carry out mutual interest in a unified form like EU lah. Okay, EU adalah unified form. So these are the 6 common which you can identify all these IGOs that have been established. The first one, to preserve peace through conflict resolution and better IR. Okay, different IGO, they approach the issue from different way. Through in United Nations, they resort to military deployment melalui peacekeeping mission. In ASEAN, they said that do not even interfere at all. Yeah, do not interfere at all. Jadi both still aim for mutual peace, but through different approach. And to promote international cooperation on matters such as environmental protection, especially post-Cold War, where more attention given towards non-traditional threat like environmental degradation, the apa increase of water level, global warming and all that. Yeah. And then number three, to promote human rights. As Cold War ended, democracy prevailed. A lot of democracy value adopted in most countries. So human rights started to gain dominance, okay, in the international political agenda. Okay, and how do they advocate for human rights? Through this international governmental organization. Okay, and then to promote social development as well. There are a lot of grants, warrants, or even funding, whatever you want to call it, offered to the members for social development effort. Okay, and usually come from a joint program from the government and this IGO. Okay, the main objective is, for instance, to reduce the poverty apa, level, especially in struggling country. Okay, so struggling country, for instance, country with civil war like Bosnia ataupun Rwanda, yang ada civil war ni selalu negara-negara yang struggle lah. So perlunya ada social development. To render humanitarian aid, so one of the international norms is in a conflicting area, when you engage in war with your opposition, whenever you notice the presence of humanitarian volunteers, you cannot harm them. Okay, bila-bila semasa kamu berperang ataupun konflik dengan negara lain ataupun entiti lain, interwar atau interstate war ataupun intra-war, civil war lah. Asal ada konflik, sekiranya kamu ada terlibat petugas-petugas kesihatan, for instance, yang volunteers kesihatan, mereka ini tidak boleh diapa-apakan. Okay, ICRC, for instance, ya, ataupun petugas-petugas sukarelawan menghantar bekalan makanan untuk komuniti yang terperangkap like Mercy. So this kind of volunteers, they cannot be harmed, okay, in any way during the war. Okay, it become an international norm, satu norma antarabangsa. And to economic development. Okay, so those are the 6 IGO's objective. And then we have some example here, yeah. And we have the worldwide or global organization, yeah. Certainly, generally open to mission worldwide as long as certain criteria are met. Okay. UN and its specialized agencies like the Universal Postal Union, Interpol, WTO, and the IMF. And then the second one is regional organization. Yeah, so the first one too is quite a clear cut. I believe everyone understands. Yeah, worldwide or global organization like EU, very common discussion. So this one I believe everyone understand. And then the second one, regional organization, open to members from a particular region or continent, European Union, African Union, Organization of American States, Association of Southeast Asian Nation, or ASEAN. Okay, so the criteria for regional organization is that you must be located in the continent, the region, in order for you to be eligible for membership in this regional organization. Okay, so you do not want to see suddenly Malaysia become members of European Union. So that just doesn't add up, because we do not belong in that continent. Okay, so regional organization based on region, basically the geographical location. Okay, whereas for worldwide or global organization, everyone are eligible for membership, regardless of where you located or what your political ideology. All are invited to be members of worldwide organization. Okay. And then third one, cultural, linguistic, ethnic, religious, or historical organization. Okay, open to members based on some cultural, bukan some cult, cultural, sambungannya di bawah. Linguistic, ethnic, religious, or historical link. Commonwealth of Nations and Organization of Islamic Conference. So we have Commonwealth, and we also have OIC. Yeah. So, for instance, in Commonwealth, we have the founding members. Commonwealth. There were several occasions in which, they do not follow the standard that initially states for its members. So Commonwealth usually refers to countries that formerly under the colonization of the Western colonial master. Okay, selalunya adalah orang-orang yang pernah dijajah lah. Tapi there were several occasions in which benda tu tidak menjadi garis panduan untuk keahlian mereka. For instance, Mozambique and Rwanda actually used to be a member of Commonwealth. Okay, what they did was they signed the Hare Declaration, and later on that declaration was acknowledged by Queen Elizabeth. So everyone knows, right? Queen Elizabeth is the head of the Commonwealth. So she uses her power to accept the application for membership from Mozambique and Rwanda. Okay. Whereas for OIC, Malaysia adalah one of the influential members in OIC in the sense that, especially during Mahathir era, where we actively involved in OIC. Okay, and then another example of cultural, linguistic, ethnicity, religious, or historical organization is OIF. Yeah, OIF stands for Organisation International de la Francophonie. Usually saya refer kepada Francophonie sajalah. Okay. OIF ni adalah another international governmental organization which comprises of countries that speaks French language. Yeah. So itu adalah shared linguistic, right? For instance, Rwanda, the one that applied for Commonwealth membership, they also used to be OIF members because of they previously under the influence of French administration, and then they pull out from OIF, barulah dorang apply for membership in Commonwealth. Yeah. And then number one, economic organization. Based on economic organization, some are dedicated to free trade, the reduction of trade barrier like WTO and IMF. Others are focused on international development, international cartels such as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Okay, so WTO, IMF, OPEC all offers assistance in economic dimension. Okay, IMF become topic of debate in the end of the 90s, especially during the AFC ASEAN financial crisis, where a lot of these ASEAN countries resorted to seek for help, from IMF at that time to untuk kasih selamat dorang lah daripada financial crisis pada waktu tu. Okay. And then next, let's move on to the NGO. Okay. Any questions so far? Ada soalan?
Maybe from me, sir.
Okay.
For like macam saya ada mention tadi macam ada certain macam section dalam IUN tu yang kena buat khas untuk macam kemanusiaan semua tu kan. So macam baru-baru ni ada macam international punya wartawan kan kena bunuh. So macam itu dibunuh oleh tentera Israel. So macam kalau macam benda tu berlaku, adakah benda tu kena ambil tindakan oleh UN ataupun kena buat bincang oleh UN? Tu soalan pertama. Lepas yang kedua, macam saya baru tahu tentang satu saya nak tahu dia IGO ataupun NGO yang macam RICEP. Nama dia Regional Islamic Conference kan? Saya lupa nama panjang, tapi dia macam dia punya organisasi ni kena pengurusan oleh Taib Mahmud. Lepas tu dia first idea dia kena buat oleh Tunku Abdul Rahman. So, macam adakah dia IGO ataupun dia dikira NGO. Kalau saya tahulah pasal RICE, saya pun baru baca kan buat pasal itu ya.
Jadi coming back to your first question regarding to some event where it involve casualties among these volunteers, betul kan? Gitu kata?
Yes.
Okay. Jadi dia balik kepada basic international relation. Okay. When we talk about international politics, there is no international police. Okay, there is no higher authority to oversee the operation by each individual states at the international system. Okay, that's why we resort to international law to somehow establish international norm that can limit the political behavior by states. But what you need to understand is that it's not binding. Okay, that's why you see constant especially coming from a big power, they usually do not accept rulings by international court when it goes against their national interest. Okay, the same goes to the case that you mentioned just now, where some international journalists get killed in some conflicting areas. Okay, so what we can do, we cannot take any action, especially if it does not involve a sovereign states. Okay, kalau dia melibatkan negara berdaulat, boleh lagi diambil tindakan in terms of international condemnation, in terms of economic sanction, in terms of travel ban, in terms of a lot of initiative yang boleh kita kenakan kalau dia negara berdaulat. Tapi bila dia melibatkan non-governmental organization like terrorist group, separatist group, militia, military junta and whatnot, then what we can do hanyalah international condemnation only or peacekeeping mission, but no concrete solution to such event. Okay, sebab pada hujungnya dia tidak bersifat mengikat. International norm ini tidak bersifat mengikat sebab tidak ada polis untuk kasih masuk penjara siapa yang buat tu. We do not even have international jail. Jadi even if we want to masukkan dorang dalam jail, kita tidak ada jail tu, no higher authority. That's why we rely purely on the consensual agreement by all the sovereign states that they need to follow international law. Okay, jadi balik kepada persoalan kamu tadi yang the first one tuh, apa yang kita boleh buat kalau dia melibatkan negara berdaulat, tindakan-tindakan yang saya nyatakan tadi, economic sanction, travel ban, international condemnation, apa lagi, import export suspension, and then membership suspension also can be considered and all that. Tapi bila dia melibatkan non-governmental organization like separatist group and all that, then tidak ada banyak yang kita boleh buat. Okay. As for your second question about the organization, I'm not familiar with that organization. In fact, this is also my first time dengar pasal that organization. If you want to know whether it's an international governmental organization or non-governmental organization, you just need to look at the members. Okay, if it's mentioned the name of a country, then it can be considered as non-governmental international governmental organization. If it mentioned name of the individual, then it becomes an non-governmental organization. Boleh, Zudin?
Boleh, sir.
So usually, if it involves decision from the state level, kemungkinan besar non-governmental organization lah, sama cap tadi itu kan. Tapi depending lah, sebab saya pun tidak familiar dengan organization tu, I cannot say for certain. I need to check first lah. But for faster confirmation, you can just check the members. If it's individual, then it become non-governmental organization. If it's a sovereign states membership, then it become international organization. Okay. Any other question before I proceed? Any other question before I proceed? The rest of you? Right. So let's move on. What is non-governmental organization? A non-governmental organization is generally considered to be any non-state, non-profit, voluntary organization. So most of this NGO is not a profit-driven organization. Yeah, that's why it's a non-profit entities, in which usually they are all the watchdog to the international organization and sovereign states behavior. Okay, this term has been widely accepted as referring to legally constituted and created by natural or legal person with no participation or representative of any government. So when they become a member of non-governmental organization, even if they are the minister of a particular country, when they come in and apply for membership in any NGO, it's under their capacity as an individual, not the minister of that state. Okay, so that's why it's considered as NGO. Banyak ya kita punya menteri-menteri ini yang ada NGO, tapi bila mereka menjadi ahli dalam NGO, keahlian mereka itu atas kapasiti sebagai individu dan bukannya menteri itu. Okay, term in general use, but is not a legal definition. In many jurisdictions, this type of organization are defined as civil society organization. Like I said, NGO, mostly the members are comprises of the civil society people. Okay. Remember, democracy heavily dependent on civil society. So without civil society, then democracy will not prevail. Okay, will not sustain. What is NGO? A non-governmental organization in an organization that is neither a part of government nor a conventional for-profit business. Usually set up by ordinary citizen, NGO may be funded by government, foundations, business, or private person. Okay, in some cases, NGOs do get the funding from government, especially think tank. Okay, or badan-badan pemikir. So they can get funded by the government for academic purpose. to conduct research and whatnot, that later the finding from such research can help to assist the government, to make a better policy. In that cases, yeah, government do have funding allocated for such purpose. Okay, sometimes they get funded by private person, yeah, for interest purpose lah. Okay. What are NGOs? By definition, a non-governmental organization is a legally constituted organization that operates independently from the government. They are organizations that are not a part of the government and are not conventional for profit business. They are organizations that pursue wider social claim. That's why these NGO are more closer towards the local community because they aim for social objective. Okay, usually these NGOs, they are the one who provide a channel for the local society to raise any concern that happen on the ground. Okay, in some cases the government cannot really cover everything. It's the responsibility of this NGO to highlight such event, that such issues that overlooked by the government. So in some way they play the check and balance role. Okay, but a more specific term to explain their role would be a watchdog. Okay, in terms of policy implementation. NGO can also be defined as the definition by World Bank. Yeah? NGO are private organizations that pursue activity to relieve suffering, promote the interests of the poor, protect environment, provide basic social service, or undertake community development. Even NGO with limited scarce resources, they cannot cover everything. They also just like international governmental organization, focus on specific issues. Okay, Izzuddin, you have a NGO. Your NGO focus on what area?
Youth involvement.
Yes, youth involvement. So that's another example. They focus on specific area. Kan Izzuddin?
Yes.
Yeah. So the same goes for the other NGOs as well. Yeah. If you focus on wide areas at the same time, dia akan menjadi tidak berkualiti sebab tidak boleh memfokuskan pada satu area secara spesifik. So that's the reason behind why every establishment of NGO, they need to identify first what are the area that they want to focus in. Okay. So how do NGOs get funding? A non-governmental organization is a non-profit citizen-based group that function independently of government. NGOs are organized on local, national, and international level to serve specific social or political purpose. Some address indigenous issues, some address security issues, some address social issues, some address youth, some address economy, and whatnot. Yeah, so all have different purposes, but they do have networking among them. So that dorang boleh bekerja bersama bila melibatkan keperluan untuk bekerja bersama. Okay, and networking too, not only at the local, national, and sometimes they also have international networking. Usually from those that have the same objectives. For instance, indigenous NGO that address indigenous group, and their networking in the other country pun adalah NGO yang address indigenous group juga. So it's about sharing of ideas, knowledge on best practice, and all that can be exchanged between these similar NGOs. Yeah. Apart from NGO, often alternative terms are used as, for example, we have independent sector, volunteer sector, civil society, grassroots organization, transnational social movement organization. Like ICRC is another example of transnational social movement organization, in which ICRC have offices in a lot of countries. Okay, the last time I remember ICRC, if I'm not mistaken, The office was in Sembulan, but I think they have already moved to other areas now. And then private voluntary organization, self-help organization, non-state actor. So semua actually refers to the same institution lah. So the influence of NGOs on both national government and international diplomacy is growing. What you need to understand about diplomacy is that it can come from three different tracks. Track number one involves government to government. Track number two involves non-government to non-government. Track number three involves local people to local people. Okay, their number increase, and as technological advance allows them to operate more effectively across political boundaries. Okay, so globalization helps for more networking to take place between these NGOs. As they expand their networking, more opportunity presented. Yeah, NGOs also provide increased opportunity for individuals to become involved in global affairs. Here you can see some example of international NGO. Okay, so you have here Nigerian Red Cross ni adalah under ICRC lah juga. Okay, we have International Medical Corps, and then for economic we have International Fund for Agricultural Development. Okay, kita juga ada apa? Oxfam International and whatnot, yeah. And then last one, we have the MNC, multinational corporation. A multinational corporation is an entity headquartered in one country that does business in one or more foreign country. Okay, so the headquarters usually in the home country, and they establish more offices in the host country. Okay. So many MNC progress through the following stages. Okay, they started with the export product to foreign countries. This is the early stage of testing the water lah, kan? Whether or not their product can be accepted by the local community, because demography also plays a major role in deciding the acceptance level of your product. Okay, for a more reserved population, they do not welcome provocative marketing, whereas for a more open local population, maybe they can accept that. And the idea is it depends on the demography of the area that you want to market your product lah. Okay, establish a sales organization abroad, and then later license use of patent technology to foreign firms that make and sell the MNC product, and establish foreign manufacturing facilities, but control remain at the home office. Okay. And then multinational corporation and entity headquartered in one country that does business in one or more foreign country. Many MNC progress through the following stage: export sales to foreign country, establish foreign sales office. Okay, departmentalization, regional departmentalization, where we have McDonald Southeast Asian region, McDonald Asia region, McDonald Europe region, those kind of regional offices. Yeah. And then also known as TNC, transnational corporation, production facilities, sales outlet, and other operation in more than one country. Long existed, now rapidly grow, vast expansion of international trade, investment in other financial interaction. So this one, all of this adalah mostly about IPE, international political economy, in which we have one specific dedicated for these areas of study in chapter number 7 or 8, where we discuss a lot on the role of this MNC in the international political economy. Okay, the dawn raid, ya, serangan subuh pada waktu itu Mahathir yang kita attention dengan Margaret Thatcher, ya, from Britain at that time, ya, all of which involve actually MNC in Malaysia pada waktu itu, starting from the education issues, ya, in terms of scholarship, ya, and all that. Tapi nantilah kita bincang chapter number 7 or 8. A multinational corporation is a firm that has been incorporated in one country and has production and sales operation in other country. There are about 60,000 MNCs in the world. I believe these numbers no longer explain the ecosystem of MNC right now. Yeah, I think it's more than that. Okay, this was from 2014. That was 8 years ago. So I think the numbers already changed. Many MNCs obtain raw material from one nation, financial capital from others, produce goods with labor and capital equipment in third country, and sell their output in various other national market. Okay, so the birth to MNC stem out from the capitalism, yeah, especially during the industrial period. Okay, where they started to explore more opportunity in foreign market. So that's how MNCs started to establish their presence in other countries' market. Okay. Here you can see a lot of MNCs example, IBM, ya, yang komputer dulu. And then Ericsson, Sony Ericsson, Ford, we have HP, Colgate, kita ada Bridgestone, Nissan, Shell, tapi tidak pula Petronas ini, ya. Petronas pun MNC juga lah. Okay. So money is a source of power in IR. We slowly going to the IPE discussion lah. Okay. So like I said, MNC usually being used by the home country's government as a political tool because these MNC they provide capital for more diplomatic strategy. Okay. So as you accumulate more profit, that profit can be channeled back to development of military, to increase your negotiation power and whatnot. Okay, that's why a country that is successful in economy usually will also be successful in security. Okay, so it's a very closely associated dimension between economy and also politics. Okay, that profit can be used to expand your territory through annexation. Okay, and when you conduct the annexation, it requires money. So that's also another example of how money help you to increase your security. Therefore, this economic giant exercise considerable influence over the course of event. Some idea of the economic power of the MNC can be gained from comparing the gross corporate product versus the gross national product of various countries, right? So the MNC we will discuss more in detail in chapter number 7 or chapter number 8 later. Now let's look at the terrorist group, ya. Di sini ada gambar lah. So terrorism, a violent act or an act dangerous to human life in violation of the criminal law of the United States or of any states to intimidate or coerce the government, the civilian population or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objective. Okay, and then here we have the definition of terrorism. An individual who commit an act of violence or threaten violence in pursuit of political, religious, or ideological objective. Okay, so terrorists starting to take the center stage of attention post the 9/11 attack, in which their radicalism, yeah, it always involved radicalism in terms of politics, religious, or ideology. Okay, so in terms of politics, for instance, the apa, KKK, okay, religious, for instance, the Islamic State, ideological objective, for instance, the PKR, yeah, in Indonesia. So ini contoh terrorism. Increasingly, terrorist groups are able to travel, move funds, and communicate globally with ease. Yeah. Again, globalization, move fund in terms of how they apa, cuci duit lah. Kurang ada apa, establish bisnis yang palsu, salurkan uang-uang itu menggunakan nama bisnis itu, dan jadilah dia duit yang bersih. Okay, communicate globally, especially in terms of recruitment. Yeah, they get to reach more audience for recruitment purpose because of the globalization and the increasingly easy access to communication. Okay, and then increasingly able to inflict massive damage. Example, 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center. We have discussed about this two lessons ago. Possibility of terrorists using biological, chemical, nuclear, or radiological. You can assume that this terrorist group stagnant in their operation. They also evolve just like us in the authorities sectors. They also explore more development, technologies development untuk lebih memudahkan mereka mencapai dorang punya objektif lah, including biological, chemical, nuclear, or even to some extent radiological weapon. According to International Atomic Energy Agency from 2008, there are 130 terrorist organizations with the potential to mount an attack using such weapon that we mentioned in the above point. Yeah. Here we have periodic table. Yeah. Ini periodic table ini dia kasih tukarlah chemist punya kepada teroris punya, ya. And then that's all for chapter number 4. Any question, everyone? Any question? Ada soalan?
No, sir.
So if I refer to your scheme of work, your midterm test should be conducted in week 9. So that means next week, right? This week is week 8. Betul kan?
Yes.
So if that's the case, then okay, it's either Tuesday next week or Friday. Yeah, I will let you guys know later for your midterm test. For the chapter covered, you can refer back to the scheme of work. Okay, and then submission of group assignment. So group assignment submission is on week 11, right? Atau saya ada mention di kelas sebelum ni? Can anyone respond?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's sir. Ini first time saya mention.
Okay, so submission of group assignment for both assignment is on week 11, and then next week for midterm test, yeah. So it's either Tuesday or Friday. If I manage to complete the midterm test question by this week, then we will have the midterm test next week on Tuesday. If not, then we'll
Sir,
have to, yeah.
next week we have holiday, right?
Oh yeah. So
Next
Friday,
week's
yeah?
transmission break.
Do you guys have any other tests next week?
For now, no.
Okay, so perfect time for you to take the ADS510 test lah kan? Friday lah, yeah, I mean Friday lah. So next week we have the public holiday for 2 days, right? Monday and Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
So Friday, okay. Boleh semua Friday. Are you guys ready for the midterm test?
Okay, sir.
Boleh, sir.
Right,
Okay.
so Friday next week, yeah, for midterm test or the format and chapters covered, please refer back to the scheme of work, right? So any last question before we end our class for this morning? And don't forget, yeah, take your attendance at your future. Any last question?
So far, no, sir.
Right, so if there's no more question, then that's all for today. See you guys again during the tutorial class later, yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
Boleh
sir.
Yes,
dah
sir.
semua. Bye
Thank you,
semua.
Okay, sir.
My Muksuri.